Hello students, today we are going to look at transformations of quadratic functions. Now we've looked at quadratic functions in lots of different ways. We have solved quadratic functions in lots of different ways, and now we're going to look at what happens when a quadratic function changes from one to another. When we look just at the equation, can we tell anything from the equation of what's going to happen? So the first thing you want to notice is that the parent function of a quadratic function is f of x equals x squared, and that's the parabola that's drawn right here. It's called the parent function because that's the function that all others are compared to. Okay, so there it is, and we want to make sure that we're looking at vertex form. Okay, and so remember when we're looking at vertex form, we know that the vertex is h comma k. So this h and this k make up the vertex of the parabola. The axis of symmetry is, and remember the axis of symmetry is always an equation, it's going to be x equals h. Because h is the x value and the vertex, that's my axis of symmetry. So again we have this. So what happens when a, h, and k change? So I'm going to be using lots of different colors and drawing in the pictures and all, so I would encourage you to use colors as well if you have the opportunity. So if you want to pause now and grab maybe 2 or 3 different colors, that might help. So first we're going to start looking at a. Notice that a is the leading coefficient. And notice that a is outside of the parentheses when it's in vertex form. Okay, a is also the same a as in standard form ax squared. Okay, so if a is positive, which means it's greater than 0, then the parabola opens upward, just like we see here. Okay, that's a positive a, it opens upward. Okay, if a is less than 0, meaning it's a negative number, then the parabola opens downward. And the reason I'm writing kind of small is because we have some more information here. Okay? So once again, if a is positive, it opens upward. If it's downward, if it's negative, it's opening downward. Now, along with that, if the absolute value of a, that means we're not looking at the negative or the positive, we're just looking at the number value. If the number is greater than 1, then it is going to be a stretch. You'll remember these probably from when we did linear transformations. If the absolute value of a is greater than 1, it's a stretch. Now if the absolute value of a is greater than 0 but less than 1, meaning it's a fraction, then we have a compression. Okay, and with the stretch, you might want to think it gets skinnier. And with the compression, it gets wider. So let's draw an example of a stretch. A stretch would be something like this. The parabola is skinnier. Okay? And then the compression would be something like this. Okay, so I'm going to call this the stretch, and this is the compression. And we'll just do another one. If it opens down, if a is negative, then it will open downward. Okay, a is less than 0. So that all has to do with just whatever number a is. Okay, all of those things just deal with a. Now let's look at what h tells us. H tells us how the parabola is going to move left or right. Okay, notice it says x minus h. If h is greater than 0, which means it's a positive number, then it's going to move to the right. If h is less than 0, meaning it is a negative number, then it will move, the whole parabola will move to the left. Now it's important to understand this part, okay? For h being positive, that would be something like, for instance, x minus 5. that would mean it would move 5 spaces to the right because x is positive, even though it says minus x. The 5, excuse me, the h is positive. The 5 is positive. Now, if we had something like x plus 3, that's x minus negative 3. I'll rewrite that as x minus negative 3. And since the 3 is negative, we would be moving to the left. Okay, so I'm going to label this one B. I should have used different colors on these, but sorry. And that one A. So an A would be moving it over 5, so the vertex would be here. Something like that. And if it was B, it would be 1, 2, 3, somewhere like that. This one's B, and this one's A. Again, if H is positive, it's moving to the right. If H is negative, moving to the left. Another way you think about it, if you do x minus 5 equals 0, you get to x equals positive 5, which is why it would be on the right-hand side. So now let's look at K. Okay? We dealt with A, we dealt with H, now let's look at K. K is probably one of the easiest to remember, because if K is positive, meaning it's greater than 0, then the parabola moves up. And I'm going to do smart this time. If K is less than 0, then the parabola moves down. So if it's greater than 0, could be right there. If it's less than 0, it might end up looking something like this. That's a little fatter than it should be, but you understand. Because K was negative, then I'm going to move down the y-axis. Okay? Now, typically, you're going to have more than one of these changes at the same time. So what I'd like for you to do is to fold your paper in half. And we're going to look at this side. And we're going to look at the top one, g of x equals 4 times the quantity of x minus 1 squared minus 1. And remember, we're always comparing these to the g of x equals x squared. Okay? So the first thing that we notice when we have g of x equals 4 times x minus 1 squared minus 1 is that a is positive 4. It's positive 4, so we know that it opens upward. We also know that because 4 is greater than 1, it is a stretch. And that's all that A tells us. So let's look at H. H is positive 1 because it's H minus 1, so that means it moves right 1 space. Okay? And then that's all that tells us. So we look at K. K is a negative 1, so that means it moves down 1 space. Okay? Again, A, H, and K tells us all of this information. What I would like for you to do is, before you come to Math Workshop, is to figure out g of x equals negative 2/3 times the quantity of x plus 3 squared plus 2. Tell me all of the different transformations that have to happen, and I'm going to give you a hint. There are 4 of them that you need to make sure that you write down. Write down all 4 of those, and then we'll discuss it in Math Workshop.